After traveling for about 3 hours, the carriage finally stopped. Strangely, it staggered as though it did not land on a flat surface. It looks like they have reached their destination. Xiqing's heartbeat escalated to an unparalleled rate. He felt that he was carried again as though he was lifted onto someone's shoulder, and then dropped from a height, rendering him nauseous. He could not see his surroundings. He only felt a gradual rise in temperature that made him drenched with sweat as though he was thrown into some furnace. Despair gnawed at his heart. He made some calculations and determined that they had been transported for over 2,000 miles to some barren place. How can anyone save them? Even their invincible senior might not be able to locate them. If they had known this would happen, they should have listened to their senior and stayed in their rooms instead. Who knew they would end up this way? The person carrying him finally stopped. He then heard someone uttering secret code words. The person carrying him responded limpidly. He heard a laugh. "Brother Tai, what good stuff did you get this time?" The person carrying him replied with triumph. "It's good stuff indeed. 3 middle immortals. 2 boys and 1 girl. All the beloved students of Yuhangzhenren. The girls 14, and the boys are 13 and 15. All younglings. Middle immortals already at such a young age? Seems like great quality. Mind if I take a look?" "Not at all. Just remember to put in a good word for me in front of our master." Soon after he finished his words, Xiqing felt that he was dropped to the floor. He was then pulled out of the black bag, and saw a light flash before his eyes. As he had been in the darkness for so long, the rays of light were piercing to his eyes. As he shut his eyes instinctively, he heard someone laugh and utter, "This really is some good stuff." He opened his eyes and saw that he was inside a lush green cave. On the overgrown vines around him, there was a vermilion flower that blossomed. The flower had an eldritch appearance. Its petals looked like the fingers of an infant that opened as it bloomed. He felt a chill run down his spine at his first sight of the flower. As he was the first to be taken out of the black bag, he was the first to see the faces of their kidnappers as well. When he saw their visage, his heart quickened. The kidnappers did not look like people. They were half beast. They had the faces of people, some quite handsome and debonair as well, but their furry torsos were savage. Some resembled those of gorillas, leopards, or vultures. They all had an eerie and piercing gaze that was capable of disturbing anyone's psyche. Under their scrutiny, Xiqing felt that as though he was bare naked. Xiqing was quite a handsome chap himself and a fine gentleman. The few people gathered around him and observed him as though he was a rare specimen. They all had coveting gazes. One of them even went as far as to pinch his face. "What a handsome and cute child. Ah, he's awake." Xiqing's face flushed with red. He scowled at that person. "My technique is exceptional. It can make his body like a sponge and unable to talk or move even while fully conscious," the vulture-bodied man replied with elation. "Let's take a look at the other 2 as well, and see if they're as juicy." As some were urging, the other 2 bags were opened as well, revealing the other 2 children. "Wow, these 2 are quite good-looking as well. God, this girl is too juicy." They gathered around the 2 children in awe. Xiqing's heart was full of despair as he looked at his fellow juniors. All of a sudden, his eyes opened wide with astonishment. Among the 2 people released from the bags, the young man was indeed his junior Heng Qing, but the girl was not. The girl looked to be about 13 or 14 years old. She had a fair appearance. Her eyes were like spring fountains, her lips the shape of a water chestnut. Although her features were not outstanding individually, they formed a stunning beauty in combination. Even more precious was a quality of hers that made anyone who took a glance at her want to take another look. Qing Luo was beautiful as well, and attracted a lot of gazes. However, her beauty pales in comparison to the girl in front of Xiqing's eyes. Qing Luo's beauty was like a clear stream, but this girl's beauty was like the deep blue ocean that mesmerized. Xiqing was at the age where he started to develop a curiosity for the opposite gender. When he first saw that girl, he felt as though something bumped against his heart. Who was this girl? Why was she caught in place of his junior? The half-beasts observing her were awed by her appearance, and their eyes widened. Exquisite. This child is exquisite. This girl would grow up to be a real diva someday. Man, Brother Tai, To think that you have come back with this baby. Is she a disciple of Yu Hangzhenren as well? Brother Tai, however, was dumbfounded. Hey, she isn't. What? I've got the wrong kid. She isn't the girl we met this morning. Wow, for you to capture the wrong person as well. But this child is exquisite as well, right? Might Qing Luo be more outstanding? No, Qing Luo's not as good looking as this kid. Brother Tai scratched his head and suddenly took a step forward to put a claw on her pulse, releasing it promptly after. A middle immortal as well. He tapped a spot on that girl's body. After a green light flashed, the girl began to talk. Who are you? Why were you on Qing Luo's bed? Brother Tai interrogated brusquely. The girl responded. I was afraid of being abducted, and wanted to find a partner. I saw that Qing Luo was sleeping alone, so I went to sleep with her. I never thought that you would abduct me. Since you've got the wrong person, please let me go. Brother Tai and his partners looked at each other incredulously. Then who are you supposed to be? I am Zichuan Shengren's disciple Ren Chongsheng. Brother Tai breathed a sigh of relief. Zichuan Shengren was indeed a venerable celestial being who had a female disciple whom he kept secure under his aegis, not even letting the world know her name. They had never thought that they would strike lucky and abduct her. Brother Tai laughed in relief. What a coincidence. Brother Tai heaved a sigh of relief and subsequently burst into laughter. This doll is much better than the green radish. The girl's pretty face quickly turned pale, and she involuntarily twitched her lips. You will regret it if you do not let me go. Brother Tai gave off a roar. Regret? Do you think your master, Zichuan Shengren, will send help to you? Do you think he would even seek revenge? Keep dreaming. If you disappear, she will not be able to find a single trace. TSK, using such a beautiful doll for alchemy is such a waste. He pinched the little girl's face as he spoke. The girl allowed her head to be tilted to the side as she looked at him. In her eyes was a swirling light, one that was full of uncommon colors. It carried with it a sense of frigidity, like the aurora light above the poles, that made Brother Tai feel a shudder in his heart. He was stunned for a moment. His companion also advised him. Brother Tai, the child needs to preserve her naivety so that the pills that we make will have sufficient spiritual power. Don't horse around. Brother Tai withdrew his hand. Of course I know that. If not, I would have set my eyes on the little birds earlier on. As a couple of them were joking around, Brother Tai and his companion brought Xiqing and the other two inside. They initially wanted to carry the 3 children in black bags, but the words of a little girl moved them. You release our locked veins, and we will walk away by ourselves. Brother Tai was then reluctant to carry a black bag as he walked. Besides that, since he had arrived at his own turf, he was no longer afraid that the 3 children would start any other offensive measures against him. Eventually, he released the locked veins of the 3 children, so that they acquire their ability to walk again. All they could do was walk. Their other abilities were still sealed. Brother Tai led the way while the 3 children were marching away. One more person guarded at the back. That way, there was no need to be afraid of the 3 children escaping. Xiqing could not suppress his urges and stole glances at the little girl. He had met Zichuan Shengren's superior's apprentice, who was also pretty and about 13 to 14 years of age. That girl was entirely different from the girl that he had met before. That little girl was disguised. What would be her intention? His heart was still preoccupied with his sister as well. He approached the little girl but failed to ask anything. The little girl had a mild scent emanating from her body. Xiqing easily felt restless, but the scent was surprisingly effective at calming him down. The roads here were odd with many forks. Each road had a drain, and in the drain there tended to be bubbling green-colored liquid. The road was also uneven. Stepping on it will even dirty your feet. What was this place? Xiqing had never seen such an odd place before. It seemed like a place where ants would live. It was branched out in many directions and had numerous crossings. He even saw other half-beasts of different shapes and sizes. Xiqing grew more and more disappointed as he walked. Throughout the way, he had met at least 60 to 70 half-men, each of them of considerable proficiency in their external abilities. They were all at least senior immortals. He was still trying to memorize his way there at first, so as to prepare himself for an opportunity to escape. However, due to the tortuous road, after passing through over 10 road crossings, he felt that his brain power failed him. His external abilities only put himself on par with that of middle immortals. He was alone, and without assistance. To be trapped in such a weird place. How could there still be any hope for an escape? Little fellas, don't try to think of ways to escape. You should accept your fate once coming here so that you can die at ease. Brother Tai threatened. The 3 children did not speak. Si Qing and Hung Qing failed to come up with anything while the little girl resorted to silence. They had been roaming about the weird pathway for almost an hour, and finally, they arrived at a house that resembled a beehive. Suddenly they were pushed inside. The dark green door closed upon them immediately. Si Qing realized that more than 10 children had already occupied the house. There were boys and girls. Those that were elder were around the age of 16 to 17, while the younger ones were about 8 to 9 years old. They were all sitting there blankly. Si Qing and the rest got their voices back and could speak normally. However, their spiritual powers were still withheld, making them look no different from normal people. Those children looked as if they had been confined for days. They were malnourished, each with eyes full of despair. Due to the fact that the ascendants in the Saha world were all adults, they were all at least junior immortals. Therefore, those children were natives or second generations of the ascendants. Being able to achieve the status of junior immortals at the age of just over 10 years old was already quite an achievement. However, most of the children there had at least reached the standards of junior immortals. That proved their high potential. Each of them could be well nurtured. Si Qing had heard that the children who had gone missing were all very famous. However, they never thought that they would meet them in such circumstances. The children had most probably learned of their imminent fate from the half-men. Hence, they were all down in the abyss of despair. Seeing that someone new had come, they were only slightly restless, and before long, their emotions died down again. Hung Qing was a rather talkative person. After blanking out for a moment, he took out some communication tool similar to a directed audio spell. He felt like getting into contact with someone he was familiar with. However, there was no response. He was agitated, and could not help but lunge himself onto the door and shrieked, "Let me out! Who are you guys? Let me out!" He had used up all his energy in a brief period of time. His voice was loud, with high penetrating power, as if it could be transmitted to 3 to 4 miles away. Those in the house all felt that his voice was so loud that their eardrums vibrated a great deal. "Stop shouting. It is of no use." One of the children spoke. "Any sound in here cannot be transmitted to the outside. Many of us here had cried so hard that we almost became mute. And it did not help at all. You had better save some energy." Hung Qing went silent. His hopeful eyes looked towards Si Qing. "What should we do? Brother Si, do you have any ideas?" Si Qing did not say anything but nodded. Hung Qing's gaze was one of despair. "Who is the one who has captured us? Are they thinking of using us to make some potions? Or any other wicked tricks?" The children each shook their head. It had been almost half a month, and they had never seen anyone else. The people did not even prepare their meals. The best they had was having drinking water, which flowed out from one of the pipes of the house. Those children came from privileged backgrounds. Little did they know that they would be confined here one day like pigs. Si Qing approached a child who was named Ren Chongsheng and asked her softly, "Where is my sister?" "She has been put down by me, sheltered under the bed. She would wake up at daybreak." Ren Chongsheng was concise. Si Qing heaved a sigh of relief. No matter what happened, as long as his little sister was all right, she would seek help. Once realizing that her brother had gone missing, she would recognize the seriousness of the matter. He was only afraid that his teachers would not be able to find the place even after knowing where he was at. "You aren't Zikin's superior apprentice, right?" "I know that apprentice." "So who are you actually?" Si Qing spoke with a low-pitched voice. Ren Chongsheng turned her head to steal a glance at him and finally replied to him, "You don't have to know who I am. I am just trying to figure out the man behind it all while helping you guys." Si Qing's eyes lit up when he heard the girl speak. However, in a moment, the brightness started to dim. They were mere middle immortals. How could they manage to escape from the heavily guarded area? As if able to read his mind, Ren Chongsheng's lips curved upwards a little. She did not say anything, but only reached her hand out and tapped lightly on Si Qing's shoulder. Si Qing's body shook a little, and immediately after that, he could feel the spiritual powers that were trapped within his body start flowing again. His eyes sparkled. He looked at Ren Chongsheng. In a trembling voice he uttered, "You." Ren Chongsheng put a finger on his lips. "Don't raise your voice." Si Qing's heart was thumping like drums. He was still fully aware of the challenge to escape. He nodded lightly, though his eyes were now sparkling. Ren Chongsheng roamed about leisurely in the house. Once she was sure that there was no surveillance, she started speaking. "Everyone, please keep quiet for a while. Listen to me." She was using her directed audio spell. The only difference was that, instead of only transmitting the signal to one target, she was able to transmit the signal to everyone in the house. Everyone turned to look at her. "No one has to say anything. Just listen to me." Ren Chongsheng was just in time to cut off the queries that were undoubtedly going to be bombarded to her by the children. The crowd nodded. She then said, "I am here to save everyone, but from now on, all of you have to listen to my orders, until the time when we are safe. Can everyone do that?" All the children had initially been filled with despair. That moment gave them the slightest hope, and their eyes lit up while looking closely at Ren Chongsheng. Of course, some were skeptical too, thinking that Ren Chongsheng would not be able to save anyone, being a child herself. Ren Chongsheng was aware of the skepticism within the children's hearts. She did not say anything, but only walked by the children with haste and tapped each of their shoulders. Her speed was unbelievable. Within a few blinks of their eyes, she was able to finish tapping each of them. Then, the children suddenly realized that their spiritual powers that had been locked were now flowing again. All the children's eyes lit up. Whatever Ren Chongsheng ordered, the children would nod in agreement. Ren Chongsheng had a request. She wanted the children there to do as told, and to stay calm regardless of whatever they may see. The children naturally agreed. Si Qing could not help but ask her through directed audio, "How are you going to do this?" "I will go out and have a look first, clear the guards on the outside, and open the door to free all of you." Ren Chongsheng spoke with minimal emotions. Si Qing could not believe it. How could this girl be capable of doing so? "How will you go out?" the children asked her through directed audio. Ren Chongsheng laughed. In a brief moment, the kids saw a flash, and the next, they realized that she had vanished from the house. The children were dumbfounded. Fortunately, most of them had been exposed to strange occurrences. They scourged the room but failed to find a trace of Ren Chongsheng. It was at that moment that they truly believed that she had escaped. The prohibitions within the house were not able to stop her. The children felt a surge in their hopes. Everyone got their act together so that even if an outsider came in, no one would realize that someone had gone missing. Heng Qing could not help but ask, "Who is she?" Si Qing heaved a sigh of relief. "She is the person who will be able to save us. Let's just wait with patience." Heng Qing muttered, "I feel that her external abilities are much more proficient than that of Big Brother." Si Qing did not say anything, because he felt that way too. Where did such a magical girl come from? Everyone had that question in their hearts. The magical girl was obviously none other than Gu Shijio in disguise. When she was having a meal at the restaurant, she had realized that some malicious pairs of eyes were staring at the three children. Therefore, she just got herself involved and shrunk herself. As for her face, that was what she looked like when she was around the age of 13 to 14. Of course, she did not have freckles back then, and her complexion was incredibly tender. The child trafficking was done with extreme secrecy that time. Even the pros in the Saha world failed to find any trace of it. If Gu Shijio took her time to look into the matter, she would definitely figure things out. Only that it would take a long time. Since the opportunity presented itself, she decided to grab it. If she succeeded, she would surely get the attention of Brother Tai. That would be the most effortless way to pry into his nest, and that would be a success to her. Her teleportation skills had improved tremendously. She could simply go anywhere she wanted. However, she was cautious this time. She had to be extremely accurate because if she missed her target, the children would not be safe anymore. The first thing Gu Shijio did was remove all the half-men around the house once she got out. The external abilities of those half-men were pretty good, but still faint when compared to Gu Shijio. Within less than 10 minutes, she had removed 4 half-men guards silently. Then, she found the switch for the door, entering from the main door into the house. And under the delightful gazes of the children, she gave a couple of orders and led them running out of the house. Those children were well trained. The bigger ones would support the smaller ones, and the stronger ones would protect the weaker ones. With that, they dashed out of the house in a line. To their surprise, there were hardly any guards in sight. They most probably did not expect the children to escape. Gu Shijio remained in front to clear their way. She was quick, and the half-men she encountered on her way were unable to even catch a glimpse of her before they were taken down. Everything happened in complete silence. When Gu Shijio was clearing the path, Si Qing would bring the children to hide in the dark corners. When Gu Shijio was done, he would lead them in dashing off. Si Qing finally saw Ren Chongsheng's skills, and totally looked up to her after that. Swift, fierce, and with rapid assaults. All her moves were practical. None to show off. Most importantly, she was very fast. Being almost as fast as the speed of light, she did not even allow time for those half-men to respond. That girl was so strong. And she had memorized her way accurately. They were running to the front, while there was a faint light near the exit. However, there was a sudden mistake. The closed walls suddenly opened up a door, and an army of half-men marched their way towards the children. It was a bad spot, with no fork, no place to hide. The army of half-men would be able to spot them easily. There were more than 20 of them, each of them of a considerable level of external abilities. They were at least senior immortals. Gu Shijio could kill them all together, but she needed time, and it was also impossible for her to make any noise. Once she made a person scream, that would attract a large number of soldiers, and the escape plan would then be a failure for sure. Gu Zijia's palms were sweating. She just made up her mind to do something, and out of a sudden, a man in purple appeared behind those half-men. Dressed in a dark purple outfit with large sleeves, his movements resembled waves. He had a stalwart figure, a head of black hair that was half-tied, and on his forehead was a colorful gem that looked like a fox's eye, giving off an ominous light underneath his strands of black hair. He had a mask that looked like a butterfly, which covered everything above his nose and only revealed his chin and lips, both of which had perfect curvatures. His lips were of a pale red shade, like a flower petal under the fine showers in the wee hours. His lips curved upwards slightly, making him look as if he was smiling even if he was not. From above him, green droplets would occasionally drop. But they were harmless, so Gu Shijio did not bother to do anything about it. Yet the young man was obviously affected by it. He held up an umbrella with lotus drawn in ink on it. The lotus was also pale red, like the cheeks of a young lady. As the green droplets fell, they smeared on the umbrella. It seemed like a lotus flower with its leaves as the backdrop, a well-laid-out contrast. The appearance of the young man was like a streak of light in a dark backdrop, one that carried an aura of an electrifying element of youth. The young man had half of his face covered, yet his elegance was still perceivable, easily making him the center of attention. When Gu Shijio was trying to figure out the young man's identity, she felt an unknown thump in her heart. It was as if a string buried deep within her heart had been gently plucked, sending off ripples throughout her body. Who was that young man? Where was he from? The young man appeared to emerge out of nowhere from behind the people. Even Gu Shijio did not see the direction from which he came. The firmament stone, who had been lying on Gu Zijia's wrist all the while, was also stunned for a few seconds. It suddenly felt an urge to take the mask of the man's face. Difui. That man did looks like Difui. Could that be him? But Difui had already immortalized and entirely disappeared. How could he then appear there? Or was it that the two merely shared resemblances? Naturally, the firmament stone had numerous questions going through its mind. The young man in purple heaved a sigh, and that managed to gain the attention of the group of half-men. The people turned towards the origin of the sound and crowded around it. They greeted him, Prince Fui. That Prince Fui gave off a laugh. Everyone, could I ask for a favor? Those half-men were obviously obliging to him. Please give us your orders, Prince Fui. Come with me. Prince Fui tapped on the wall, and a door emerged. He went in, followed by the half-men. The door closed, and no one was left. Gu Shijio heaved a sigh of relief. That young man in purple seemed to be in affiliation with the master there. Was that a good or bad thing? However, she did not have time to think about that now. Hence, she immediately brought the rest to escape through the exit. In a vast open forest was a terrifyingly huge tree that grew from beneath the cliff. The huge tree was approximately a few hundred meters tall. Had it grown on the plains, it would be much taller than the other trees, being outstanding among the rest. However, it grew down in the abyss. When looked from above the forest, it could hardly be spotted and would blend in with the other trees. And they got out from a tree tunnel of the huge tree. No one ever thought that those children would be located there, which was why they could never be found. There was a clump of half-men guards around the exterior of the tree, but they had all been defeated by Gu Shijio beforehand. Although the children and Gu Shijio had escaped the nest, it was yet to be safe. Those half-men could hunt them down any time. The forest was lush and thick, and of unknown size. The children had yet recovered from the frightening experience. They had never seen such a huge forest, one which borders could not be seen even when viewing it from above. What sank into their eyes were only greens. There was nothing spectacular, and they could hardly figure out their direction. How then would they be able to escape? Everyone's gaze fell on Gu Shijio in hope of a solution. Gu Shijio said, "This forest is not that huge. It has been cast with a spell to make you think so. I will get all of you out." She tapped onto something, and Lu Wu and the muscle sprung out from within. Both of them were animals, so it caused a stir among the crowd. Gu Shijio asked the muscle to enlarge itself to a size bigger than a house, and let everyone else hop into its shell. Everyone was uncertain what she had in mind, but they adhered to her orders. Gu Shijio turned her head and saw Si Qing zoning out. He did not show signs of hopping into the muscle, hence she asked, "Why are you not going in?" Si Qing shook his head. "Chongsheng, are you not coming with us?" Gu Shijio shook her head. "I need to stay here for a moment. Let me make sure everything is all right here before we talk about anything else." Si Qing mused for a while. "That man in purple is my brother. He would never conspire with them. He must have his reasons. Please don't hurt him." So that young man was the brother that Si Qing had always adored. He looked like a notable individual. He was probably also investigating the matter. However, according to the little fellas, their brother only went missing 2 days ago. How did he establish a connection with them so quickly? Gu Shijio nodded. "I understand. Quickly move." Si Qing was determined. "Chongsheng, I can go in with you." "There is no need. Your level of external abilities would only make you a liability. You bring the rest of them back and don't let them be captured again." Si Qing heard the insistence in her voice. Hence he gave in and hopped into the muscle. Even though it was carrying more than 10 people, the muscle still had plenty of space. It was indeed a fascinating creature. Muscle still, in fact, looked like a child and was extremely cute. Everyone crowded it and teased it in a friendly manner. As they were having fun, suddenly they felt wetness underneath their feet, like water. The muscle had so many good-looking young lads in it, and he was tempted by the food. It had not tasted human meat for a very, very long time. Of course, it knew that the lads in it could not be eaten. Hence, it only tried to suppress itself while drooling. Finally, it put on a straight face. "Sit down properly. Don't touch, or else I will eat you up." It opened up its mouth and formed a hole capable of engulfing a person. As a result, the little fellas immediately resorted to silence. Gu Shijio was unaware of the happenings inside the muscle, but she did give Lu Wu a map, so that it could find its way. Lu Wu nodded and went back to its original size. It then carried muscle on its back, bounced into the air and flew in a specific direction. Gu Shijio saw them leave with her eyes, and only then did she turn to re-enter the tree tunnel. She had full trust in Lu Wu's sense of direction. They would definitely be able to send the children back to where they came. Gu Zijia's first action was to teleport to the cell where the children were imprisoned. The door was tightly closed, and the half-men there had not found that the children had escaped. They still worked in an orderly manner. As for the half-men that had been killed by Gu Shijio, she had also thoroughly cleaned away their corpses. Unless someone were looking for those half-men that had died, their deaths would not be exposed for a while. She turned around and wanted to find the place where the people behind the scenes lived. It was strange to say that she secretly caught several half-men and interrogated them, but they did not even know where their masters lived. It was noted that only the guards who were close to the master would know. After exploring the place, Gu Shijio finally knew how these passages worked. These were the branches of the big tree to transport nourishment. The number of passages was equivalent to the number of branches in this big tree. It was even more complicated than a spider web. More importantly, the roads here were not arranged according to an array. So even if Gu Shijio was good at recognizing the path, she would easily get lost. Theoretically, the person behind the scene should live at the very top of the thickest trunk. However, Gu Shijio had been running along the most spacious passage and ignoring the branches. In the end, it was a green wall, and she did not see any palace. Was she mistaken? Where did this pervert behind the scenes live? She did not give up and continued to search on both sides of the passage, trying to see if there was a secret door or whatnot. She was an expert in cracking mechanisms, so if there were an unknown mechanism, she would be able to spot it. However, after she searched for a long while, she still did not find any secret door. It seemed that the direction she was looking for was wrong. Gu Shijio sighed. When she was about to turn back and change the path, there was some movement at the end of the corner. She was shocked and quickly made herself invisible. After a while, one person appeared at the end of the road. Gu Zijia's heart pumped faster. It was the purple-clothed young man. He was also the eldest senior of Si Qing and the gang. The young man was still holding his umbrella. When he walked over slowly, it was very pleasing to see, as if an animated landscape picture. Gu Shijio had been immune to handsome guys in recent years. Regardless of how cute the guys were, she only treated them as an image. She would enjoy watching them, but they would not make her have the slightest temptation. Nonetheless, when she saw this young man, her heart was shaken a little bit, and she even had an inexplicable feeling of sorrow and grief, so she looked at him one more time. As she was invisible, when the young man passed by, she was at no more than half a meter away from him. They were very near to each other to the extent where Gu Shijio could smell the fragrance of his body. This fragrance made her slightly breathless. Mr. Fui. This name was elegant. Gu Shijio unconsciously recalled the poem she had carved in the Crystal Palace on Earth. One is willing to walk away without being obsessed with the fame he deserves. This young man was really matched with this name. She forgot to ask Si Qing what was the name of this eldest senior. Perhaps there were these two words in the name. Gu Shijio guessed countless questions in her heart. Meanwhile, Mr. Fui went all the way to the end of the passage, then bent his fingers to knock on the wall. He knocked in a sequence as if he was tapping out a piece of music. Gu Zijia's heart moved as she followed him over. After a while, the wall actually lit up with a green halo. The green halo slightly expanded until a door slowly appeared and opened. Mr. Fui put away the umbrella and lifted his legs to walk in. It was at this moment that Gu Shijio realized that there was a mechanism. It seemed like the person who designed this mechanism was indeed a master. Gu Shijio followed him in, and the door behind him slowly disappeared. It was a different world behind the secret door. It was actually exquisite, like the room of a young lady. There were famous calligraphy and paintings on the walls, and the furniture in the house were all valuable antiques. It was more appropriate to refer to this place as a palace than a house. That was because the space was incredibly vast and wide. The ground was covered with white carpet, and the other end of the carpet was a high platform like a golden temple. There was a chair with fox skin on it, and a teenager was sitting on the chair. Gu Shijio was not sure about the gender of the teenager, because the person was dressed like a man, but had the face of a lady. Big eyes, small mouth, fair skin, and 2 dimples. The person's eyebrows were quite thick, which made the teenager slightly masculine. Without the need to ask, Gu Shijio knew that this was the one behind the scenes. In this hall, 8 people were standing neatly on both sides. The teenager saw that Mr. Fui walked in and immediately laughed loudly. Mr. Fui was then invited to sit by the person's side. Mr. Fui did not reject and only sat down beside the teenager. He looked very relaxed and casual. Apparently, he was a special guest here. Mr. Fui, how is the progress? Did you manage to come up with the prescription already? The person behind the scene asked. The voice of this person was also very neutral, which made Gu Shizhou unable to distinguish the gender. Mr. Fui flicked his fingers on his robe as if he was flicking dirt off his robe. There are still a few more steps. Young Palace Master, being impatient would not help the matter. The young Palace Master frowned. I worry that the longer the delays, the lower the power of the kids. I was planning to use them to refine medicine 2 days ago. The longer it delays, the more variables we will have. Mr. Fui smirked. If you cannot wait, you can use them to refine as medicine now. However, the medicine can only be consumed by a woman. It should not be a problem for you to take it. His reply choked the young Palace Master. Mr. Fui stood up. Since you do not need me anymore, I will not stay here any longer. I will leave now. Goodbye. He turned and wanted to go. Meanwhile, the young Palace Master quickly stood up. Mr. Fui, please stay. I apologize for my rashness. I hope that you don't blame me for it. She took out a purple-red lingji from her robe and handed it over. This is 1,000 years old lingji, and I will give it to you as compensation for my mistake. Mr. Fui did not accept it and said indifferently, You do not have to be like this. We used to take what we needed from each other. Once I help you to refine the medicine successfully, you just need to give me the thing I want as promised before. Of course. Of course. The young Palace Master quickly answered. 2 of them chatted for a while, and the young palace never stopped mentioning the prescription. Mr. Fui gently sighed. This medicine is extremely complex. If you can tell me the specification of the person who needs this medicine, I can probably quickly formulate the prescription accordingly. The young Palace Master was stunned. I have told you before. I am the one who will consume it. Mr. Fui looked at her and did not speak. His gaze was intense. The young Palace Master finally could not resist. It's not that I am not willing to tell you. However, everything about that person is top secret, and no one is allowed to mention anything about it. This meant that she was indeed serving someone else. There was a bigger boss behind her. Gu Shizhou initially thought that catching this young Palace Master and killing the guards in her palace would solve the problem. However, it seemed that it was not the right time to act rashly. At least she had to know the big boss behind her first. By looking at the attitude of the young Palace Master, she was very loyal to the boss behind her, so it would not be easy to get information from her. At this moment, there were countless thoughts flashed in Gu Zijia's mind. Mr. Fui laughed. It seems that you still doubt me. Well, it is reasonable. After all, we just got to know each other not too long. In fact, I don't care who that person is. You just have to tell me the gender, the level of spiritual power, and what skill he is practicing. I am now in an area under your control. Even if you tell me this information, there are more than thousands of people who match the criteria in this world. Are you still afraid of me leaking the secret? Perhaps you are not in a hurry to get this medicine. If so, you can forget about what I have just said. His words were persuasive. The young Palace Master thought for a moment and sighed. He is a man. She was about to continue but suddenly heard an urgent knocking from outside. It was the signal to report something critical. The face of the young Palace Master changed. She lifted her sleeves, and the door was opened again. A half-orc guard came straight in and reported. Young Palace Master, those human medicines have escaped. The young Palace Master stood up in shock. What? All the defense systems in the cave were triggered. There were sharp whistle sounds everywhere that made people felt panicked. After the young Palace Master knew that the children had escaped, her face was pale like snow. She looked awful. While investigating the traces of the children's escape, she personally opened the security settings and then send a large group of people out of the cave to find the whereabouts of the children. This young palace master was indeed a talent. Her arrangements were efficient and orderly. Not only did she quickly learn how many subordinates she had lost, but she could also guess that the person who created the mess was the kid named Ren Chongxing according to some clues. Her voice was cold and chilly. I am afraid that this kid is not the private disciple of Zichuan Shangren, but an imposter. She was able to kill so many of my subordinates in the palace in just a short while. I think she must be very good at martial arts. Based on her character, even if she rescued those people, she might not escape together with them. She may still be staying in this tree palace. Everyone, go and search the entire palace now. You shall not miss out a single corner. Thus, all the half-orcs in the cave were out to hunt Gu Shijiu. Gu Shijiu did not expect the security facilities in this cave to be so advanced. Once opened, it could actually block the spiritual power of everyone. Even her teleportation could not be performed as well as her invisibility spell. The tree hole was closed entirely. It only allowed people to enter but not to exit. Apparently, the young palace master would like to trap her in the cave and catch her. There was quite a lot of half-orcs in this nest. Half of them ran out to find those kids who had escaped, and the other half stayed in the nest to search for Gu Shijiu. Some of the half-orcs still retained their sense of smell as a beast. Fortunately, Gu Shijiu was very good at dodging people. Gu Shijiu often avoided the pursuit of the half-orcs the critical moments. However, without her spiritual power and invisibility, the spaces to hide were getting smaller and smaller. Although no one had found her, it was getting exponentially more difficult for her to hide. She discovered that the half-orcs were following her smell to trace her location, so she made up her mind and took the oozing green liquid from the wall to smear on the body. The fluid had a smell of green grass, and it could actually obscure the light fragrance on her body. The only drawback she could think of at that moment was that it would not be easy to clean. All of a sudden, Gu Shijiu heard the footsteps of the half-orcs in front of her. Just when she was about to go back and hide in a small alley, she also heard the footsteps and the voice of the half-orcs in that alley. It appears that she was cornered. This time she was afraid that she could not escape anymore. She could only take the risk to fight without her spiritual power. She listened to the surrounding and heard that there were slightly fewer soldiers coming from the front. There were about 7 or 8 of them based on her estimation. When she was about to break out, there was a hand on her shoulder. She was shocked. Subconsciously, she rushed forward to escape the hand. Suddenly her wrist was held, and a voice appeared beside her ear. Don't be afraid. Come with me. Gu Shijiu finally got to see the person who grabbed her. He wore a purple robe and a silver butterfly mask. It was actually Mr. Fui. While Gu Shijiu was still stunned, Mr. Fui pulled her with his left hand and touched the wall with his right hand. A door seemed to open, and he dragged her into it to hide. Gu Shijiu breathed a sigh of relief and looked around to study her surroundings. She found that the decoration was elegant, like the bedroom of a noble young man. The room was adequately furnished. There was a bed beside the wall. The bedsheet was painted with landscapes, which looked like smoke and rain. It was very artistic. In the middle of the room there was a bathtub with floating petals, and there was steam in the tub. After taking a look at the layout of this room, Gu Shijiu was a bit shocked. The style in this room gave her a feeling of familiarity. It seemed that her bedroom in the Futsang Palace was also in this style of decoration. Of course, the interior design of the room in the Futsang Palace was much more elegant than here. This was like a simplified version. Was this the style that Mr. Fui liked? Or it was initially designed like this for him to stay temporarily? After all, he only came here 3 days ago. The duration was so short. Would the young palace master specially design a room for him? She looked at Mr. Fui and was about to speak, but there was a sound from the outside. Heavy footsteps were heard. We have searched everywhere except here. The little thief should not have escaped. We have let the dogs search for her scent, and the smell is still very fresh. Should we search here again? This is the bedroom of the special guest, Mr. Fui. Mr. Fui is quite fussy. I am afraid that he will not be happy if we search in his bedroom. What are you afraid of? The little thief is very tricky and also highly skilled. If she really hides here, it might be unfavorable to Mr. Fui. Therefore, even if we search the room, Mr. Fui will not be angry with us. The people outside were loud. Apparently, this time they would definitely come in and search. Gu Zijia's eyes quickly turned around to find a place to hide. However, apart from the bed that she could barely hide under, there were no other places that could conceal a person. If the beasts came in to search, they would certainly check the bed. Gu Zijia's eyes suddenly fell on the tub, and her heart pumped a little faster. She gestured to Mr. Fui. Take off your clothes. Mr. Fui was stunned. Ha! Gu Shijio said. I thought you wanted to take a bath? Hurry. Go in and clean yourself. Mr. Fui was still trying to figure out what she was trying to do. I am not used to bathing with clothes on. Gu Shijio nodded. That is why I asked you to undress. Gu Shijio heard that the people outside were coming. She did not want to waste time talking to him anymore, and so she pulled him to the direction of the tub. You take a shower. I will hide underneath. Without any explanation, she jumped into the tub. She saw that Mr. Fui was still standing there and was a bit anxious. Hurry up. You can wear the trousers inside. I won't be able to see anything. Since I am not afraid of it, what you are afraid of? She was a lady and was not afraid of sharing a bathtub with this man. What was he afraid of as a man? Perhaps it was because he was still a teenager. Was he shy? Someone was knocking at the door outside. Mr. Fui. Mr. Fui. Mr. Fui sighed softly. You are such a bold little girl. I am not afraid that you take advantage of me, but you are dirty. You will stain the water. I am a bit fussy with cleanliness. Gu Shijio was speechless. This person really had a severe obsession with cleanliness. It was such a critical moment, yet he was still worried about this thing. Fortunately, although Mr. Fui was somewhat disgusted with her, he also thought that this bathtub was the best hiding place, so he took off his robe and gown, and left his underwear on. This man was actually very tall. His muscles were tight and firm, and his thin waist was full of abs. His legs were straight and slender, and his body was beautifully lined, which was extremely eye-catching. He was indeed a man, looked slim with clothes on but looked fit when undressed. Gu Zijia's heart raced a little, with her eyes fixed on his underwear. She was half squatting on the edge of the tub. A pair of big eyes were half squinting. The water soaked her dress and slightly showed the curves of her body. Her eyelashes were somewhat damp and watery after being steamed by the water. Mr. Fui thought that the girl in front of him was a bit disturbing. Where was she staring at? What did it mean when a little girl stares at his underwear? He frowned slightly but smiled. He naughtily teased her. Why do you look at me so slyly, little girl? Do you want me to take off this last piece? Gu Zijia's face was slightly red. She was not a little girl. It's just that she had transformed into a smaller size now. This time, she did not cover her face with her technique, but used the bone shrinking technique and the facial disguise technique. Of course, her current appearance was the appearance of herself when she was 13 or 14 years old. No one was able to see her original appearance. This boy definitely could not see it too. Are you a pervert who likes to show off your body? Mr. Fui remained silent. Gu Shijio snorted again. Do you find a sense of accomplishment by teasing a young girl like this? Mr. Fui was speechless again. Gu Shijio smiled again. Okay, let's stop talking nonsense. Can you please come in first? They are rushing in very soon. Mr. Fui squinted at her. If it were another little girl who looked at him and teased him, he would definitely kick the girl away. However, to the girl in front of him, he was strangely soft-hearted. In particular, Mr. Fui was even more soft-hearted when he saw her pretty face. His heart was inexplicably warm, but also felt a little bit sour. He did not talk anymore but lifted his foot and stepped into the tub. Although the tub was rather big, it was still a bit crowded when two people were inside. Gu Shijio did not want to be so close to him, so she leaned back to the side and was about to say something. However, the door suddenly opened. Gu Shijio immediately sank. The petals were scattered above the head, and also covered the view inside the tub. 4 half-orcs sneaked in, and suddenly saw Mr. Fui in the tub. They were stunned. Mr. Fui, sorry to disturb. Mr. Fui leaned against the wall of the tub. Almost half of his body sank in the water. He only showed the body parts above his 2 arms on the surface. The black hair was scattered on his shoulders. He was covered by steam, so the half-orcs could not even see his shoulders clearly. When he saw those people coming in, he did not move but just looked at them lazily. Are you coming in to see me take a bath? The 4 half-orcs shook their heads. They knew that man was actually very difficult to get rid of. He was very fussy. Once he was irritated, he would not be happy. If he complained to their master, they would be tortured. The 4 of them took a step back. No, we don't dare to. We followed the instruction of our master to search for the person who sneaked in. Do you think she is hiding here? We are just afraid that she will sneak in and hide in the dark. We are worried that she would disturb Mr. Fui while he is taking a bath. When they were talking, the 4 people quickly glanced through the room. The place where people can hide in the house was the bed. However, the bed was visible, and they knew she was not there. One of them gazed at the big tub. He coughed and asked, "Why would you think of taking a bath at this moment?" Mr. Fui laughed. Are you qualified to ask me? Do I need to get permission from you to take a bath? He smiled harmlessly, but the person felt chilled to the core. He suddenly recalled one of the half-orcs who had offended Mr. Fui. He was smiling and charming at the time. However, the half-orc was turned to death by the young palace master. And the way he died was terrible. He could not afford to offend this man. The half-orc took a step back and rushed to apologize. Mr. Fui used his palm and slumped into the water to grab a bunch of petals. He smiled and said, "Maybe the person you are looking for is hidden in the bathtub. Do you want to come over and search?" The 4 people collectively shuddered and laughed forcefully. Mr. Fui, you must be kidding. You are the special guest of our palace. You definitely would not hide the thief. Since Mr. Fui is fine, then we will not bother you anymore. Goodbye. They quickly rushed out. When they left, they did not forget to close the door for him. The footsteps went away, and Gu Shijio came out from the water. She just took a breath, and Mr. Fui suddenly raised his palm and pressed on her head. Go down. Gu Shijio sank again. Almost at the same time, the door was opened again. Gu Shijio heard a sound through the water. Mr. Fui, are you alright? It was the voice of the young palace master. Had she suspected Mr. Fui? Would she be checking his tub? Gu Shijio knew that if petals were covering the top of the bathtub, then other people would not be able to see her. However, if they removed the petals, she was not able to hide at all. She slowly clenched her fists under the water. Once she was exposed, she would start the attack and strike first. Unfortunately, when she was preparing to attack, she accidentally touched the man's chest. Mr. Fui went stiff at once. He put his arm into the water and grabbed her wrist. Gu Shijio did not dare to struggle to avoid being noticed by the young palace master. Mr. Fui kept his composure and lazily replied, "Young palace master, are you also coming to watch me take a bath?" The young palace master sighed. "I was afraid that the thief might come in and interfere with your pleasure." As she spoke, she approached the bathtub. The voice of Mr. Fui was light and cold. "Since I started to take a bath, there are only you and your subordinates who came in to disturb." The young palace master was speechless. She put herself in an embarrassing situation. Her pretty face changed, and she seemed to be angry. However, as she had scruples, so she forcibly endured with it. She smiled. It is good that no outsiders came in. She took another step forward and quickly glanced into the tub. She only saw the petals stacked on the surface and could not see anything. The handsome face of Mr. Fui suddenly turned serious. "Young palace master, men and women should keep a distance from one another. I only agreed to help you to refine medicine. I never allowed you to take advantage of me. If you are so suspicious about me, I don't think it is necessary for me to stay here anymore." Indeed, It was inappropriate for her to do so. Furthermore, the young palace master still needed him, so she embarrassedly said, Mr. Fui, you have overthought. I am here just to visit you. Since you are all right, I will leave now. She quickly turned and walked away. Gu Shizhou once again came out of the tub. She spent some time underwater. It was almost 15 minutes. As she had practiced to this level, even if her spiritual power was sealed, she would not easily drown. Therefore, her face looked rather normal, unlike someone who had been choked. Mr. Fui looked at her and had a deep thought. As far as he knew, only people above the level of Golden Immortal could achieve such a feat. This girl looked like a 13-year-old girl. How could she possess such a high level of spiritual power? Also, why did he feel differently when he saw her? Initially, Gu Shizhou was merely hiding under the water. However, when she emerged, her face was very close to his face, and they could smell each other. Gu Zijia's feet were a little numb in the bottom of the water. When she got up, she was a little anxious and almost plunged into his arms. She quickly supported herself with one hand. Unfortunately, it was right on his chest. Mr. Fui subconsciously pulled her hand off. Since Gu Shizhou lost her support, she fell, and her face crashed into his face. He was still wearing a mask, so her smooth and tender face was partially stuck to his mask. This was still all right. The thing was that her juicy lips had also touched his lips. Gu Shizhou quickly retreated and looked up. Little girl, you took advantage of me. Mr. Fui said while examining his lips. Gu Shizhou still could not accept being referred to as a little girl. This kid was at most 17 or 18 years old, but she was already over 200 years old. She could even be his great-grandma now. Gu Shizhou cleared her throat. Young man, you have overthought. It was just an accident. Accidents happen. She got up and was about to jump out of the tub, but Mr. Fui pressed on her shoulder. I will get out, and you can take a bath properly. These petals can help you to remove the odor and sap from your body. Gu Shizhou was speechless. The kid was disgusted by her. Well, since he saved her once, she would not be calculative with a kid. Therefore, Gu Shizhou cleaned herself in the water. Since she was wearing clothes, it was all right to soak for a while. Mr. Fui lifted his foot and went out. While doing so, he pinched his fingers and cast a spell while pointing at his body. A white light flashed through, and his body now had a dry robe. He was back to his handsome and elegant form. He then pulled out a set of robes out of nowhere, and put them on the stool next to the tub. You can change into this after you are done. The kid was quite thoughtful. Although this kid had a wicked tongue, he was a good man who was helpful. This was why he could be the senior of Si Qing and the rest. It was because he knew how to take care of people. Gu Shizhou gave him a compliment in her heart, and she also sincerely thanked him. However, she looked at the stack of neat robes and saw that it was men's wear. She was afraid that she could not wear it with her current height. Is there a skirt that can fit my height? Gu Shizhou also had not prepared a dress for this age. She thought for a moment. Your female junior's skirt is also fine for me. Mr. Fui looked at her eyes with a slightly strange expression. I don't have her dress, and I don't have a hobby of collecting women's dresses. I only one set of robes that I haven't worn before. If you don't want it, I will get rid of it. Gu Shizhou was speechless. He was indeed a fussy kid. Hence, Gu Shizhou no longer bargained with him. After she finished washing, her body was drenched. As she did not have her spiritual power, she could not use the cleaning technique. Of course, she could also use her internal force to dry her hair, but it would take a lot of time. Men's clothing seemed practical at this point. It would be more convenient for her to move around. She asked Mr. Fui, who was sitting on the chair and seemed like he wanted to meditate. Young man, can you go out for a while? Mr. Fui shook his head. If I am not mistaken, someone should be supervising us outside. If I go out like this, someone will immediately come in and check the room. You can go to the bed to change your clothes. What he said made a lot of sense. Gu Shizhou did not speak anymore, and directly exercised her power. When her internal force was being applied, the dress on her body dried at a speed that was visible to the naked eye. As she was intensely using her power, her head was like a steamer, and there was white mist steaming on top. When the dress was almost dry, she opened her eyes and found that Mr. Fui was staring at her. His expression looked complicated. This kid should have never seen someone use their internal force before. After all, the people of this continent always practiced with spiritual power. Gu Shijio no longer cared about him and started to deal with the robes. The robes were too long and too big. She had to cut it shorter. Fortunately, she had scissors, so it was not a difficult task for her. Mr. Fui silently looked at her busy cutting and sewing, and suddenly he asked a question. Are you someone who comes from another world? Gu Shijio raised her eyebrows and looked at him. Why do you ask so? Mr. Fui answered leisurely. Can you guess? Gu Shijio disliked playing these kinds of guessing games. She did not answer and continued to clean herself. Mr. Fui looked at her, and her hair was half dry. She randomly bunched up her hair and tied it into a bun. Unfortunately, a strand of hair slipped at the side of her face, floating around her cheeks. She raised her hand to adjust it from time to time. She was apparently a little girl, but there was an unspeakable style in her. There was a strange feeling in Mr. Fui's heart. This situation seemed to be quite familiar, as if he had experienced it before, and he was deeply impressed. However, when he thought about it, he could not remember where he had seen it. She was quite efficient, and the clothes had been cut properly. After that, she went on the bed and put down the net to change her clothes. Gu Shijio would normally use her spiritual power to get dressed, so she was not quite used to doing everything manually. She took off the semi-dry dress and took out a fresh set of underwear and panties from her storage space. When she was about to wear the robes, the man outside suddenly rushed in and pushed her down. He pulled the quilt and covered her in it. He was as fast as lightning, so Gu Shijio had no time to respond. Subconsciously, she tried to issue power from her palm, but she recalled something and stopped. She pushed his chest away and said, "Hey you." Shoo. A finger tapped on her lip and forced her into the quilt, so that she did not even reveal a strand of hair. The door was opened again, and the voice of the young palace master was very crisp. Mr. Fui, have you finished bathing? Do you want them to change some hot water for you? Mr. Fui was half sitting on the bed, showing his body leaning against the bedpost. He was holding a book in his hand and faintly glanced at the young palace master. His voice was slightly cold. Young palace master, you never know how to knock on the door of a man's room. Fortunately, I have already finished bathing. If I were just about to come out of the bath, I would be seen by you. The young palace master blushed, but then she smiled and said, It will not happen. I have estimated the time and guessed that you have finished bathing. It is mainly because I worry that the water is too cold and causes discomfort for my special guests. When she explained, her eyes quickly turned around in the house to look for possible clues. Of course, she did not find anything. Gu Shijio had kept her dress that she took off into the storage space. The young palace master did not give up and looked at the half-covered quilt on Mr. Fui. Most parts of his body were inside the quilt. He was sitting lazily with one leg half-bent. She actually could not see anything wrong with him. She was now asking for help from this man, so naturally, she did not want to offend him. She did not want to expose his quilt, or it would really destroy their relationship. She continued to chat with Mr. Fui for a while and finally turned and left. Before she went, she asked two half-orcs to come in to take the bathtub away. The room had returned to calm. Mr. Fui gnawed his teeth. Get up. It turned out that Gu Shijio was also afraid that the young palace master was suspicious. She squatted between Mr. Fui's legs, and of course, her face was half lying on his inner waist. She was now petite and small, so even if she hid inside the quilt, no one could actually spot that there was an extra person in it. As long as the young palace master did not remove the quilt, she would not be able to find her. The young palace master did not find Gu Shijio, but her pose between his legs was too embarrassing. Moreover, she was only in her underwear. Her underwear was the modern-style one, and not the ancient long-sleeve tops with trousers. Although Mr. Fui was wearing a gown. He could feel the smoothness and tenderness of her body. This feeling was hard to be described. He had not been so close to any woman in his life. To make matters worse, this person was a little girl. He should not have saved her. This rescue actually brought so much trouble to him. It caused him to lose a lot of firsts. His first time taking a bath with a girl. His first time sharing the bed with a girl. He apparently hated people to be close to him. Even his junior brothers and sisters did not dare to get too close to him. They were usually at least 3 feet away. Yet this little unknown girl seemed to have crossed all his boundaries. Furthermore, when she was squatting between his legs, he actually began to have an involuntary reaction. Gu Ziji had no other way but to stay very close to him. After that, she realized his response that tapped on her waist. Gu Shizhou definitely knew what it meant. She was sickened but could not move at all. When she was near to his body, the faint medicinal flower-like aroma snorted her nose, causing her heart to sway. Of course, this incitement stopped when she detected his reaction. The incitement had now become suffering. When the young palace master went out, she was about to roll to the side to stay away from him, but she heard his shout. Therefore, Gu Shizhou was not shy anymore. She came out from the quilt and looked at him with a raised eyebrow. "Young man, you are the one who pushed me down first." Mr. Fui was speechless. So what? He did ask her to stick to him like this and even squat on his sensitive parts. His eyes then fell on the pretty face of Gu Shizhou. It was undeniable that she was gorgeous. Her beauty made his heart beat fast when he first saw her, and he subconsciously wanted to help her. At that moment, her pretty face was fair and slightly pinkish. She did not seem to be shy or embarrassed despite being in the same quilt with a stranger. Wasn't she supposed to feel self-conscious? Mr. Fui was undoubtedly furious for the improper manner of this little girl. He looked at her fiercely and said, "It is true that I was the one who pushed you down. But don't you feel shy? Shouldn't you be blushing?" Gu Shizhou had lived in this world for so many years. Her face was already thicker than the walls in the city. Undoubtedly, she was a little bit uncomfortable just now. However, when he asked her, all her uncomfortableness had already disappeared. She smiled and talked casually. "Why would I be shy? I did it because the situation made me do so." Gu Shizhou then put her palm on his shoulder. "Young man, to achieve big things you should not care too much about the details. You don't have to worry so much." Mr. Fui looked at her little hand and tilted his head. He seemed to be smiling. "I am a man. Naturally, I wouldn't care about this detail, but you. I can also ignore this kind of detail. Don't worry. I will not ask you to bear any responsibility." In the eyes of Gu Shizhou, he was still a fresh grass, and she did not want to be an old cow who liked to eat fresh grass. Mr. Fui was really stunned by her words. He squinted at her, and suddenly wanted to test her bottom line. He turned over and pressed her down again. Gu Shizhou was not prepared. Even if she was ready, she had no spiritual power at this moment, and could not avoid his attack. It was strange, she could not use her spiritual power, but how could this boy be able to use his power? She was petite and was pressed down by him. She still had no time to wear her clothes, and a large piece of smooth skin was exposed. Her current body was still very well developed. The breast was already quite developed, so when she lied on the bed, it was actually quite appealing and charming. At first Mr. Fui was just trying to scare her, but when he saw her like this, his throat was tight and had an impulse to kiss her. However, he did not have time to put it into action because a stilted short dagger arrived at his chest. "Young man, I advise you not to be so impulsive." Mr. Fui looked at the color of the dagger, as there was a blue light emerging from it. "Is this weapon poisonous?" "Smart." Mr. Fui's eyes lightly flashed. Finally, he let go of her. "So you are concerned about it?" Nonsense, she did not care about it because she was forced to do so just now. However, she would definitely not allow him to take advantage of her. It was strange. If another man did such action to her, she would definitely kick the guy to the ends of the planet. However, this boy, forget it. Since he saved her once, she would not want to be calculative with him. Gu Shijiu quickly put on her robes. In the blink of an eye, her eyes suddenly fell on the wrist of Mr. Fui and she was stunned. There was a bracelet that was gradually disappearing. The golden bracelet was shining in multiple colored lights. Gu Shijiu was very familiar with this bracelet. It was inside the box she gave to Shen Yanma. She saw the bracelet automatically attached to his wrist that time. Did the little guy not like it and give it to his senior brother? It seemed like this was the case. However, if Shen Yanma could only open the box, then the things inside could probably only be worn by him alone. How could he give away the bracelet? The bracelet was very strange. It was revealed on the wrist of Mr. Fui, and it disappeared again. It seemed to be holding some power. This bracelet. It looks good, can you take it off for me to see? Gu Shijiu asked. Mr. Fui had covered his wrist. No. It is quite rare for a man to wear a bracelet. Is this given by someone? Gu Shijiu asked. Mr. Fui obviously did not want to talk about it. Let's gossip less. What are you going to do next? What are you going to do? Mr. Fui looked at her. Who are you? He recognized the private disciple of Zichuan Shangren. It was not the person in front of him. Gu Shijiu did not want to reveal her real name, as the mysterious voice once warned her not to interfere too much with the affairs of this world. Therefore, she had been a spectator for many years. If this were not because of the kidnapped kids, she would never want to interfere with this case. Rin Chongsheng. Mr. Fui slightly felt that the name sounded familiar, but he could not remember where had he heard it. The girl in front of him was too strange. Her age was very young, but her skill was ridiculously high. If her spiritual power were not sealed, her skill level should be above him. Perhaps she was the same as his mother, who had always stayed in a young appearance and never grew up. How old are you? Mr. Fui asked. Gu Shijiu replied while she was tying up the scattered hair. Don't you know that a woman's age is a secret? You shouldn't ask that. The little girl could actually talk quite well. Mr. Fui still wanted to ask again, but Gu Shijiu put her finger on his lips to keep him quiet. All right, we only met each other by chance. After this incident, you will continue your life, and I will continue mine. I will not ask for your name, and you don't have to ask for mine either. Mr. Fui slightly bit his thin lips. He chuckled and looked at Gu Shijiu with complicated feeling. Ever since Shen Yanma grew to an adult appearance, so many girls fell for him. Anyone who had seen him would like to chat with him and try to be present in front of him. Occasionally, when he asked a little bit more, the girl would be pleased to tell him everything, even about their ancestral family background. The little girl in front of his eyes was special. She did not do any of that. Little girl. What he was trying to say something, he was interrupted by Gu Shijiu. Don't call me little girl. Call me Chongsheng. When Gu Shijiu listened to him to address her as a little girl, she could feel goosebumps all over her body. She had the feeling that she was an old yellow cucumber that tried to be painted green. At this moment, her hair was already tied up into a bun. As she was using her fingers as a comb, it looked a bit messy, and a small amount of hair fell to the side of her face. Mr. Fui could not stand for untidiness, especially the untidiness of such a beautiful little girl. Thus he handed her a comb. Recomb it. Gu Shijiu thought that it was too troublesome, so she shook her head. I refuse. Mr. Fui pulled her over and pressed her down on the chair. A girl should not have such messy hair. Let me comb it for you. Gu Shijiu was speechless. This boy was too fussy. There was a certain familiarity to all of this, but she could not quite put her finger on it. Gu Shijiu did not expect Mr. Fui to be quite good at combing hair. He untied her bun, combed it, and tied it up again. After a while, her hair was tidily combed. He then handed her a mirror. Take a look. Gu Shijiu looked at the person in the mirror, and was slightly stunned. Her hair was smooth, and it was half bundled. She seemed quite like Lu Yifei of Xiaolongnu. She looked cold and elegant but with a slight innocence. Gu Shijiu was distracted, and her illusions that had not appeared for a long time appeared again. As usual, there was a man and a woman. The woman seemed to have just taken a shower and looked a little bit lazy. She was casually combing her hair. The man came in from outside, and she immediately handed the comb to him. "Come help me comb my hair." The man sighed and familiarly combed the hair for her. When he was done, the man handed her a mirror. "Come take a look." The woman glanced at the mirror and asked, "Is it a long new bun? This hairstyle is suitable for you." Gu Shijio looked at the mirror and was absent-minded for a moment. Mr. Fui looked at her pretty face and was a little stunned. This scene made him have a feeling of déjà vu. Gu Shijio regained her consciousness and jokingly said, "I didn't expect you to have this skill. Do you often help your junior sisters to groom themselves?" Mr. Fui turned and sat back on the bed. He looked at her with a smile. "Are you jealous?" Gu Shijio was speechless. "Young man, being narcissistic is a sickness. Please go and get treatment. Don't call me young man. Call me Fui." Gu Shijio was shocked. "Your real name is Fui? I thought that Mr. Fui is just a title." Two of them then chatted for a while, and felt that they were closer than before. They then discussed the next move. According to Mr. Fui, there is a crystal mechanism here. Once it is opened, all the spiritual power of outsiders can be sealed. All the guards of young palace master have consumed a strange medicine beforehand, so this mechanism is not constraining them. Gu Shijio desired to regain her powers. She would be unable to do so unless the mechanism was eradicated. It would thus be no easy task, for the core of the mechanism, coined as the Tree Palace, sustains a myriad of half-orcs about it. As Mr. Fui told Gu Shijio the entire case about the mechanism, Gu Shijio furrowed in anxiousness. It was asserted that attempts at entering the Tree Palace would be fairly troublesome, for its entrances have been all closed. Gu Zijia's lack of spiritual power would make it impossible for her to do so. Gu Shijio wanted more information. She looked at Mr. Fui and said, "You're alone here, yet you don't seem to be afraid." Gu Shijio was a fairly percipient person, thus she had readily perceived that Mr. Fui was no weakly individual. His strength was as formidable as a mountain. However, there was an inundated amount of half-orcs here that possessed the power of gods. Even Gu Shijio would thus not pose any challenge against them. She was sure that the best guards would surround the core of the Tree Palace. If Mr. Fui's identity is divulged, albeit his possessing great ability in fighting, he would be unable to win. Mr. Fui understood what Gu Shijio meant. Thus he colloquially laughed and said, "Sacrifices are necessary to lure the enemy out." Gu Shijio was pensively ruminating. It was then that the sound of a bell emanated from outside. "Mr. Fui, open the door, please." Gu Shijio then hid behind her bed drape. "Let him in. I have a plan." After that, Mr. Fui invited the person in. A minute after, Gu Shijio attacked the person, and he fell onto the ground. She killed him with ease. Gu Shijio proceeded to remove the clothes of the dead man. Mr. Fui glanced at her in a furrowed expression, stopping her. "What are you doing?" "Disguising as him. I can leave as I am now." Less than 15 minutes later, Mr. Fui saw the half-orc that stood in front of him. "Your disguise technique is superb." Indeed, one could not distinguish between the half-orc and herself. They were both of the same height, and there were other striking similarities. Gu Shijio even used a decomposing powder to dissolve the dead orc's body. Not even a single trace of it was left. Mr. Fui folded his arms while observing her getting at work. He did nothing. This woman was unparalleled in her sinister and malevolent behavior. She was indeed a cold-hearted being. Of what descent has she come about from? Not at all a 12 or 13-year-old innocent girl. Both of them came out, one in front and one at the back. Gu Shijio prided herself with being the person in front. Indeed, one cannot but liken her behavior and disposition to the half-orc she murdered. There was no difference. Even her voice was as harsh and deafening as the creature. Mr. Fui was astounded. The orc Gu Shijio impersonated as was only merely an escort, and was in no power to enter the little master's room. So Gu Shijio brought Mr. Fui to the door and left afterward. Before Gu Shijio left, she transmitted a message. I will seek out the button and eradicate it. Mr. Fui had no time to reply, for she had turned around and ran away. She ran kindred to the likes of a half-orc, limping with every pace. The woman was indeed a talented being. At the doorstep, Mr. Fui stopped for a while, and finally turned around and entered the facade of the palace room. After Gu Shijio trod on several pathways, it was at one that a person shrieked at him. The person in front stopped. Mr. Fui had already told Gu Shijio the whereabouts of the place, and drew her a map too. With her adept sense of direction, finding the button would pose no difficulty. She followed the route to the detail and found the place, but it was unexpected that as she approached the button, someone had shouted for her to stop. She turned around, smiling sheepishly at the 4 half-orcs that were pacing towards her. It was immediately perceptible who the leader of the pact was, a half-orc with a height kindred to a small skyscraper. He shouted, with a deafening sound akin to thunder. "From which division are you?" Before Gu Shijio attacked and killed the half-orc earlier, Mr. Fui asked for its identity. Thus, she expressed the name of the deceased half-orc, and even lifted her waist belt for proof of so. The person looked closely at her waist belt, and discerned no faults. He tapped on her shoulder and spoke. "The area in front is a restricted area, none can pass. You are a commander of the army and should remain in the barracks. Why have you any reason running about here?" Again Gu Shijio smiled indifferently. Right. I was looking for the trespasser and got lost." "Idiot. To lose your way even in such a place. Fu, bring him back," the person asserted to the half-orc adjacent to him. Gu Shijio ended up back on the same path, returning once again. On the path back, Gu Shijio and the half-orc had a conversation. The half-orc was indeed a blabbermouth. It was coupled with Gu Zijia's adept conversational skills, which was better than those of any interrogational officer, that she could even provoke a person to speak the most tenacious things. Indeed, in less than a half hour, the human orc had professed all that is surreptitious about the locale. When they came about a corner, all she had to do was puncture a poisonous needle into the half-orc, and use him as a disguise for her next scheme. This half-orc was a werewolf. Once Gu Shijio concealed herself as him, she began striding with huge steps and returned on the path once again. "Fu, you have returned so quickly. Has that pitiful person returned to where he came from?" the towering orc sergeant inquired. Gu Shijio replied in a low-pitched voice, "He has returned." He turned a few corners down the road and recognized the path onwards. She answered so flawlessly that the sergeant had no further inquiries or doubts. The role of the half-orc Gu Shijio disguised as was to guard the button. There was often no other person who would be able to approach the palace, with the exception of the young palace master. Gu Shijio had finally laid her eyes on the crystal mechanism. It bore the shape of a mountain made of obsidian. Atop the hill was a black dragon carved with the same material. Indeed, there were vivid engravings on the dragon. With it, a gallant tale marking its vigor and intrepidity. The black dragon's eyes were wide open. It was constructed with the carnelian blood-red spar crystal, emitting a bright red hue. One could see the refraction of the obsidian, giving a rather ominous and elusive atmosphere. Gu Shijio heard Fu saying that the black dragon's eyes are often shut. Only when the mechanism was opened would its eyes be open as well. That indeed meant that the blood-red spar crystal was in fact the button. Gu Shijio secretly observed the obsidian hill, and perceived that the mechanism was, in fact, a fairly powerful one. But to her, it was fairly easy to crack. But if she were to move her hands, she would be noticed by others. There would be little time for her to destroy the mechanism. Gu Shijio started to contemplate her rate of success. This ultimately caught the sergeant's attention, who walked to her and tapped her shoulder. "Fu, why do you keep staring at the spar crystal? Are you unwell?" Gu Shijio expressed pain while opening his mouth wide. "You hit me too hard." The sergeant laughed wildly. "You are made of paper." "Yes, the spar crystal is indeed grand, but you shouldn't gaze at it for too long, as it may cause you to hallucinate." Indeed, Gu Shijio felt dizzy right at the moment she stared at the crystal. She quickly shifted her gaze away and talked to the officer. She was a good sweet talker, And in addition to her good imitation skill, the officer was quite happy throughout the conversation. Gu Shijiu intentionally showed him a pai gao made from jade, and claimed that she found it in the market. She wanted to play a game with the officer, as someone had taught her a few games. In fact, pai gao did not exist in that era, at least none of the people there had seen it before. The officer seemed to be very curious after listening to the rules. He got another 2 subordinates to join the game. There were a total of 8 security guards who were all at the level of senior immortals. However, their job was to safeguard the crystal every day. Hence, it was really boring. The officer thought that it was not a big deal to have some games since the other 3 colleagues would help to watch the crystal. The more they played, the more they liked the game. Eventually, they were addicted. Therefore, they began to get the other 4 subordinates over to join the game. Initially, the officer was still quite alert and occasionally took a glance at the crystal array. He even scolded the other 4 guards who came over to watch the game, and asked them to return to their guard post. However, they were addicted, hence he did not really care that much. In the end, all of them were distracted by the game. Gu Shijiu felt that it was a good time to take action. She gently flicked her fingers when she was playing the game. She silently counted 30, 29, 28. When she counted to the last single digit, she suddenly said, "Collapse." While the sudden change happened right at that moment, the officer who won the game laughed aloud. A blackout followed this, and he finally collapsed. The rest suffered the same fate. Some were still looking at their pai gao and fainted before they could even count their points. Gu Shijiu smiled as she saw everyone collapse. Although she had no spiritual power, she was an expert in using poisons. She hardly used poisons in the past as she always managed to seriously injure her enemies in just a few seconds. Thus, she was delighted by the results. She could not compete with anyone in there since she had no spiritual power. Hence, the only way was to poison everyone to make them unconscious. The level of detail required in the planning was so significant. Her plan would be considered as a failure if one of them collapsed even just a second later than the rest. The poison she used was only able to reach its optimal effect when people were not alert. Therefore, she had to use the pai gao game to distract them and applied the poisons when they were not alert. However, the chief officer was quite strong. He was yet to faint even though his body was numb. He was staring at Gu Shijiu as his lips were mumbling softly as if he wanted to question something. Unfortunately, his tongue was numb as well. Hence, he could only interrogate silently. No one could hear anything. Gu Shijiu did not bother to investigate further, and killed him immediately. The rest of the 6 guards were no threat to her, as they were not going to survive. Throughout the game, Gu Shijiu found out from those people that the half-orcs were ferocious as they murdered a lot of people outside. They once joined the devils and eventually escaped and surrendered to the young palace master, as they did not want to obey the management of Ning Xuema. The young palace master gave them a few pills, and after that, their body started to change, and it was then that they became half-orcs. Creatures like them who had practiced to their level would usually hide their monstrous appearance when they were in the outside world, disguising as human beings. Apparently, the young palace master had refined the medicine she needed 3 times, yet all 3 attempts failed almost right at the end. Each attempt required her to sacrifice 18 children. So there were already 54 children who were killed. This was also the main reason why the young palace master was intrigued to learn that Mr. Fui was able to make the pills successfully on the first attempt. She treated Mr. Fui with utmost respect and politeness. It was also through this conversation that Gu Shijiu realized that these people did not know who was the main culprit. The other information that she wanted to learn had already gotten from the conversation. Hence, Gu Shijiu had no reason to treat them nicely anymore. Right away, she killed them all. Once she was done, she wasted no time and left in a brief moment. With swift movements, she flitted to a place near the crystal mountain. She raised her hands to crack the lock and moved forward 1 stair at a time. She could not use her spiritual power to teleport to the top, because if she left out even 1 step of the staircase, the alarm of the crystal mountain would be raised. Soon enough, she reached the top of the mountain. She hopped on the head of the black dragon with a few leaps. The lock to close the red crystal was right at the dragon's horn. As long as she could press the dragon's scale, she would be able to close it, and her power would return in a brief moment. At that time, she could use her spiritual power to destroy the red crystal once and for all. Just as she was approaching Black Dragon's neck, she felt that her surrounding turned dark and cold. A sinister sound roared. "You bastard! It turns out you are here." A bright red ray was shown towards Gu Shijie with great power. Gu Shijie reacted swiftly and twisted her body in the air while the bright red ray went right past her feet, hitting the wall opposite her. With a deafening noise, the wall cracked open. Immeasurable amounts of light green fluid burst into the direction of Gu Shijie. There was no time for Gu Shijie to think about her next move. She instinctively hid from the fluid behind the black dragon. However, even with her incredible skills, the fluid seemed to be everywhere, chasing her and forcing her to leap around the place to avoid it. It was obvious that the fluid was poisonous. As it squirted on the floor, a pungent green smoke sprouted. The high-intensity green fluid blocked the path to the dragon head. Yet the way back was blocked by the young palace master who appeared out of the blue. Seeing that Gu Shijie was attacked by the fluid to the point that she had to flee to her direction, the young palace master's eyes brightened with cruelty. "Ren Chongsheng, you little bastard. I will shred you into pieces this time. I will make you suffer the worst fate of not being able to live nor die." A bloody red knife appeared from her palm. The body of the knife was bright red in color, yet the cutting edge was pale blue. It was definitely carrying a poison. As soon as the knife was visible, there were ghastly sounds of crying ghosts coming out of the knife itself. The sounds were both frightening and alarming. Gu Zijie's composure had certainly changed. The spiritual power of young palace master had already reached level 8 of a golden immortal. If she was to raise its level by 1, she would be able to refine herself into an immortal being. There was no way that Gu Shijie could beat the powerful young palace master. At least not when she was unable to use her spiritual power. The young palace master intended to trap Gu Shijie alive to torture her, which explains why she did not fight with her best capabilities. Instead, she forced Gu Shijie to approach her like how a cat would play with a mouse. Her favorite moment was to see how a person's facial expression changed from confident to despair. Gu Shijie knew exactly what was in her mind, but with the extremely corrosive green fluid still shooting around, she had no other choice. Seeing that she was getting closer and closer to the young palace master, an evil smile appeared on the young palace master's face. She was merely waiting for Gu Shijie to hand herself over. Swish! A sound was heard, and a colorful light burst out from young palace master's back. It was totally unexpected, leaving the young palace master defenseless. Gu Shijie hid abruptly, but her eyes were exposed to too much light. Amidst the flashing purple shadow, a person was dashing towards her at full speed. "It's you, Mr. Fui. What are you doing here?" Gu Shijie asked. Mr. Fui gestured for Gu Shijie to continue, then smiled with calmness. "Do you have to ask? We are on the same side." The young palace master was furious. "Great then. Now I can use both of you together to refine my pills." The corner of Mr. Fui's thin lips was raised. "Let's see then. I suggest you to ask some of your subordinates to help you." The young palace master was full of confidence because Mr. Fui's spiritual power was at most at the level of a golden immortal, while Ren Chongsheng was only 13 or 14 years old. According to the intel from her half-orc, she was only at the level of a middle immortal. Seeing that the two who stood before her could never defeat her, she did not think of even asking for help. Hence, she only hissed impatiently. "With the two of you? I can do it on my own." "Haha, look at that pride. Remember what you've said." Mr. Fui smiled slightly, and then they started fighting. At this point, the back of the black dragon was full of the corrosive green fluid, leaving no place to set foot on. The only place that was clear of the fluid was the one near the dragon's head. Yet it was too far away from Gu Shijie. Without her teleportation power, she would be unable to reach that place. The young palace master was aware of this fact, which is why she did not pay much attention to Gu Shijie and solely focused on Mr. Fui. Her power was still much better than his because she had already practiced for a few thousand years. Mr. Fui, on the other hand, though a prodigy, had only practiced for about 6 years. She forced Mr. Fui to a corner, inch by inch. Of course, she would take a look at Gu Shijie once in a while during the battle. Gu Shijie certainly looked helpless at the time. Obviously, she could not find a way to go up. Even though Mr. Fui's spiritual power was not comparable to hers, the tricks that he knew were extremely intriguing. Each one was so unique that she had never seen them before. At first, she thought that she could crush her opponents and finish the battle within 15 minutes. However, that was not the case at all. After battling for another 10 minutes, she finally figured out what her opponent's skills were actually like, and then she started to fight back ruthlessly. Finally, Mr. Fui was forced to the point of frustration. He was about to lose. The young palace master had a wicked smile on her face. This time, I will make you pay the price. As she was about to end the battle with her last move, all of a sudden, a cracking sound was heard, which sounded like the lock was being opened. This sound was familiar to the young palace master. This was the signal that the crystal mountain was closed. The young palace master was stunned and turned around to check. Abruptly, her expression changed to one of despair. Run Chongqing was standing right on top of the head of the black dragon, and she had already pressed the dragon scale that could close the lock. Black Dragon's eyes closed gradually, yet Gu Shijie, who stood at the dragon's head, looked like there was a glimmering light surrounding her. The surprised young palace master was furious now. She did not expect that Gu Shijie was able to arrive at the top. And worse than that, it had never crossed her mind that she could turn off the lock in such a short time. There were hidden traps all over the dragon's head. And even for herself, she had to be extra cautious when she was up there. The half-orc guard who was in charge of the lock had already mastered its technique, but even he would need about 15 minutes to close the lock. For amateurs, even spending 2 days on the lock would not guarantee that they could even turn it off. Yet Gu Shijie was able to do it in such a short period of time. How did she do it? At this time, the young palace master could not care less about Mr. Fui anymore. Swiftly, she rose and prepared to fly to the head of Black Dragon to catch Gu Shijie. However, she did not notice that Mr. Fui had had something in mind. He raised his hand, and his long sleeves blocked her way. Nobody has won nor lost yet, how can you just leave? The young palace master could not get away from him that easily. She gave a harsh glance, and suddenly she blew a bright whistle. The whistle screeching sound almost pierced through their eardrums. This was the special whistle she used to summon her subordinates. And for those who had heard, they had to come to her no matter what. Her safeguarding was always strict, and without the sound of this whistle, her subordinates were never allowed to come into this place. However, after a few moments, none of her 4 close subordinates were here yet. She felt that something was wrong, and she turned her furious glance to Mr. Fui. The corner of his mouth raised slightly, smiling apologetically. You can blow it harder, try and see if you are able to summon their souls. You've killed them. The young palace master's face turned red. It's just because they are such amateurs. Mr. Fui smiled elegantly. The young palace master held her grip tightly on the whistle, and out of her mouth came a voice as loud as the roar of a tiger. The sound caused the ground to tremble. Shortly after this roar, 8 half-orcs surged from afar. These people are obviously different from the other half-orcs they had dealt with earlier, as the sizes of their bodies were very tall, each like a tower. Once seeing these people, Mr. Fui's heart sank. He did expect that the young palace master had so many subordinates who had practiced to the level of golden immortal. What's even worse was that these people were obviously wild, like killing robots who only knew how to murder. All of them came at once, and it felt like an earthquake was approaching. The young palace master's roar had not stopped yet. Apparently, she was controlling the beasts to surround Mr. Fui. She then rose and flew immediately towards Gu Shijie. She wanted to turn on the lock again, and then she would tear this disobedient girl into pieces. Mr. Fui was not a person who loves to fight, so amidst the chaos he yelled, "The wind is strong." This was a signal that he and Gu Shijio had agreed upon back in the room, meaning that the situation is dangerous, run quickly. Yet out of his expectations, Gu Shijio smiled. She raised her hand and split open the eye of the dragon. A seven-colored light was glowing above her palm as if powerful energy was ready to be launched straight into the eyes of the black dragon. Boom. It sounded like a glass exploded. The eyes of the black dragon shattered. Countless of blood and flesh splashed everywhere as if plenty stones fell from the sky. Even the red crystal shattered together with the black dragon's head. The young palace master was shocked. She could not believe that the crystal mechanism invented by the person she admired the most could be destroyed so easily. The man claimed that less than 10 people in the world could destroy the mechanism. Furthermore, he or she must possess the spiritual power of a senior immortal or above. However, it was destroyed by a young girl who was just about to turn 14 years old. Who was that little girl? Who are you? The young palace master asked. Are you Ning Xuema? Rumor has said that Ning Xuema was a little girl who would never grow old. If she was here, did her husband, Shinjuli, come along too? The young palace master immediately looked at Mr. Fui, who was surrounded by 8 half-orcs. Mr. Fui did not stop looking at Gu Shijio with a confused gaze while fighting with the half-orcs. Gu Shijio could finally attack the young palace master. What else she should fear since she has got her spiritual power restored? She leaped and jumped off the black dragon's head. I'm the one who wants you to die. Quickly, tell the culprit behind all this that he'll consider to let you die with a complete corpse. The young palace master was stunned. After a fierce battle, the young palace master finally escaped after sacrificing more than 10 subordinates. She had set up numerous mechanisms in the tree palace, and one of them was a secret tunnel for emergency exits. She knew that she was not able to defeat Gu Shijio after a few rounds, and she might even die if she continued fighting. In addition, she suspected the opponent was Ning Xuema. Otherwise, how could that lady have such powerful kung fu? If Ning Xuema were here, her husband would definitely be somewhere nearby. If the couple managed to sneak into her tree palace, they would certainly destroy everything here. Therefore, she decisively escaped. She used a forbidden spell to call a group of half-orcs to prevent Gu Shijio and Mr. Fui from chasing after her. Then she opened the nearest secret tunnel and fled. Of course, she was extremely vulnerable when she escaped. She lost half of her arm, and her clothes were badly torn. She nearly had to run naked with half of her scalp detached from her head. She looked like she had just come out from a tornado, and no longer looked charming like she used to be. It was difficult to open the secret tunnel. The young palace master had already escaped far away when Gu Shijio and Di Fui managed to open the secret tunnel after killing those half-orcs. A loud sound was heard from the outside when Gu Shijio almost entered the secret tunnel. A moment later, more than 10 people rushed in. It was then that Gu Shijio found out that Si Qing and his apprentice had come. Qing Luo was the first one who rushed in. Her eyes were sparkling when she saw Mr. Fui, eldest senior. She quickly rushed over as if she wished to crash into Mr. Fui's embrace. Suddenly, she paused when she saw Mr. Fui's gaze. Oh, thank God you're safe. When the rest saw Gu Shijio, who was disguised as a half-orc, they quickly shouted and surrounded her. Si Qing shouted, "Catch her alive!" Swiftly, she turned around and looked at Mr. Fui. Eldest senior, did you see Ren Chongsheng? Did she come in again? Mr. Fui did not answer but looked at Gu Shijio, who was being surrounded. I think you can remove your makeup now. Thus, countless eyes looked at Gu Shijio. Qing Luo stared at Gu Shijio curiously with a little jealousy. She felt something was wrong when she woke up yesterday and quickly reported to her master. Certainly, their master was panicked and immediately gathered all the outstanding disciples. Even Si Qing and the juniors rushed back to the quarter as well. They reported the situation in the tree palace to their master, and he decisively rushed to there without any delay. Along the journey, Si Qing and his juniors could not stop praising Ren Chongsheng, which made Qing Luo feel uneasy. Since her senior apprentices could stop complimenting her, She could not wait to find out how good Ren Chongqing could be. She did not believe that Ren Chongqing was prettier than her. That was because she was the prettiest in her clan. At this point, it was completely meaningless to continue pretending to be a half-orc. Besides that, it was extremely uncomfortable to wear that furry makeup all day. It would not be a difficult task for Gu Shijio to disguise herself again, since she has got her spiritual power restored. Thus, she applied a cleaning spell to remove her makeup and turn into the appearance of Ren Chongqing. She looked calmed and elegant with a special aura which could not be described with words. Everyone who rushed in was stunned when they saw her. This little girl was too beautiful. Qing Luo's face turned pale with an upset expression. She could not hold back her emotions and said, "Now I know who set me up. Qing Luo MS. Chongqing was the one who saved your life. How could you be so mean?" Si Qing lectured her. Qing Luo was even angrier when she found out her brother apprentice, who used to protect her, eventually decided to protect others. "Indeed, she saved my life, but she also set me up. Do you mean that I'm not supposed to even find out the truth? In fact, she did not have to set me up but just give me a heads up. I would have tried to cooperate." Qing Luo continued. Qing Luo pursed her lips. "No matter what, she is the one who is wrong since she set me up. Also, she is not the disciple of Zichuan Shangren, who knows her real identity. Perhaps she is one of the bad people here." "Nonsense." Someone nearby interrupted the conversation. Qing Luo apologized. "If it were not for her, 3 of you would have died earlier." A charming and handsome man walked over. "Master." Si Qing and the rest bowed and greeted the man. Gu Shijio could certainly recognize that was their master, spiritual master Yuhang. Mr. Fui also bowed. "Master." Spiritual master Yuhang happily said, "Nianma, you've achieved great success this time." Suddenly, a gem in Gu Zijia's hand dropped to the floor. Gu Shijio quickly lifted her head and looked at Mr. Fui. Nianma? Mr. Fui shifted his gaze to her. "Yes." Gu Shijio continued. "How can you be so tall when you're just 6 years old? Did you take any medicine to do so?" "Certainly, that was Shen Nianma." He looked at Gu Shijio with a sparkling eye. "Did you know me before this?" "Why not? I even gave you a birthday present on your first birthday. You were just as tall as a bean sprout at that time. I could not believe that you've grown up so much in such a short time. You even know how to flirt now." Anyway, all of his junior apprentices were older than him. Why would they willingly address him as eldest senior? That was the reason she did not think that he was Shen Nianma. Gu Shijio could not stop cursing silently. It was indeed beyond her expectation. Was it a norm for a child to turn into an adult in just 6 years? Was his gene mutated? Gu Shijio was once warned to distance herself from the people in that world. Hence, she did not want to disclose her true identity now. Therefore, she did not say much but smiled. "Your Highness is generally famous in our world." Thus, it was common for her to know that he was only 6 years old. In other words, she had indirectly answered his question. Shen Nianma slightly twitched his lips. He had very famous parents, but he did not wish to live under their glory. Thus, he always used his nickname when he was away from home. In that era, people had a first name and also the middle name. The middle name was usually given before adulthood. Shen Nianma turned into an adult when he was 3 years old, and he only found that his parents had left a letter to him when he returned to the Fantian Palace. His unreliable parents had left for a business trip at some other continent again. They wanted him to take good care of himself, since they were going for at least a decade. Therefore, his father named him Fui as his middle name. His father was a very open-minded person, as he claimed that he did not really care about the family name, because he used to pick his own family name as well. Therefore, Shen Nianma did not necessarily have to take his father's family name. In fact, he could pick D Emperor, Huang King, or any other name as his family name. He even said Shen Deity. Fui was not a good combination. Shen Nianma felt that his father did not want him to leverage on the popularity of his family name, which was exclusively given to him. As a result, Shen Nianma truly thought that Di Fui sounded more dominant and elegant than Huang Fui after a short ponder. Therefore, he always used Difui as his name when he was out and often got people to address him as Mr. Fui. He has been behaving like an adult in the recent 3 years. Hence, nobody treated him like a child as well. Even though he was the youngest in the clan, the way he dealt with everything was even better than the adults. That was the reason all his juniors who were older than him recognized him as their senior. Only his master still called him as Nianma. The rest of his juniors addressed him as eldest senior. At that moment, Gu Shijie had turned into a young girl who looked about 13 to 14 years old, which was almost the same age as Qing Luo. Hence, she was just a little girl in Shen Nianmo's eyes. However, he felt the way the little girl looked at him was like an ant looking at a kid. On the other hand, Si Qing and Heng Qing have seen Gu Zijie's appearance before. Hence, they were not shocked at all. Their juniors were still in denial. Even spiritual master Yu Hang was stunned as he did not expect her to be that young. You are? He then looked at those half-orcs that have been killed. He really could not believe that such a young girl could kill all those half-orcs, especially because they all possess quite powerful spiritual power. Even he might not be able to do that alone. Where did this little girl comes from? How could she have such good kung fu? He had checked the wounds of the half-orcs and confirmed that Gu Shijie did not use any forbidden spells. Which means, the little girl indeed possessed a very powerful and dangerous kung fu. However, he could not think of whose disciple she could be. Suddenly, he took a step forward and launched a fierce attack directly to Gu Zijie's face. Everyone was shocked. Si Qing and Heng Qing were shocked and shouted, "Master! She saved us. Please spare her life." Qing Luo snorted. "Just because she saved your life, it does not mean she has a good intention." Shen Nianma did not respond but stood aside to observe. Certainly, Gu Shijie would not just wait for the attacks. Swiftly, she began to fight with Spiritual Master Yu Hang. Initially, Spiritual Master Yu Hang did not give all in as he was afraid to hurt Gu Shijie. But after a while he began to use 90% of his power, and eventually tried his best to fight. In a brief moment, Spiritual Master Yu Hang suddenly retreated, and looked at Gu Shijie in awe. "May I know who is your master?" He proudly claimed that he knew all the kung fu in the world, but he had not seen any of the strategies used by Gu Shijie. This question was difficult for Gu Shijie to answer since she was trying to keep a low profile. However, the strange voice in her head suddenly assigned a new mission to her. Try to find a way to stay beside Shen Nianma and help him to get his kung fu restored as soon as possible. Gu Shijie was stunned. Restore? His kung fu is already powerful. Look, he has already achieved the power of a golden immortal at the age of 6. Other kids are still wearing their diaper at this age. He is the master of the heavenly law. So you want me to stay by his side until he has got his kung fu fully restored at the level of the master of the heavenly law? Which means there was no fixed duration for her? Not fully restored, only until he achieves the level of a mighty immortal. Gu Shijie remained silent and continued, "What if I reject the mission? Then Huang Tu will never resurrect." Gu Shijie was surprised. "Do you mean it is still possible for Huang Tu to resurrect? You can say so." "Fine, I accept this mission." Gu Shijie finally agreed. While she was still thinking about what identity she should use to stay around Shen Nianma, she blurted out, "I have no master." Spiritual Master Yu Hang's eyes were sparkling. He could not believe that this child learned all the kung fu by herself. She was a genius. She was probably as good as Shen Nianma. If he could recruit such a genius in his clan, he would even smile in his sleep as it would definitely make everyone jealous. Spiritual Master Yu Hang was eager to recruit this outstanding disciple. Hence he looked calmly at Gu Shijie but tried to point out her flaws. "Little girl, you are indeed a genius, but some of your strategies are not perfect, especially your spells. I think it is because you have no teacher to guide you. I am sure you will excel in this world if you can find a good teacher as your guide." Spiritual Master Yu Hang tried his best to indirectly convince her. However, he probably sounded too indirect. Hence, Gu Shijie did not quite understand his message as she was not focused on the conversation either. In fact, Spiritual Master Yu Hang's advice reminded her that she could recruit Shen Nianma as her disciple. If he became her disciple, then she could stay by his side and force him to practice. Gu Shijiu immediately felt refreshed and looked at Shen Nianma. She looked even more genuine than Spiritual Master Yu Hang. Nianma, do you want another teacher? Shen Nianma frowned. Gu Shijiu immediately used the advice given by Spiritual Master Yu Hang. You're quite powerful, but your moves were not perfect. I think it is because you do not have enough teachers. Are you keen to be my disciple? I have studied this area for quite some time. Gu Shijiu recalled that Shen Jiuli helped his son to find more than 10 teachers. Hence Shen Nianma was not restricted to only have one teacher. She truly thought it was not a big deal to have her as his extra teacher. Shen Nianma was still silent. He was shocked as he looked at this little girl, who is just as tall as his chest but still pretends to be an adult, wants to be her teacher. He confidently rejected her. No, Gu Shijiu frowned and decided to try harder. Why not? You have seen my kung fu and my spiritual power, right? Shen Nianma interrupted her right away. Having spiritual power that is as good as a mighty immortal is not enough. I will not even be your disciple even if you are as good as the great deity. It must be a joke. How could he get a little girl to be his teacher? Moreover, he had a special feeling for her. Although he had yet to find out what exactly the feeling was, he knew that he did not want to be her disciple. What a little ***. He was already rebellious at the age of 6. Gu Shijiu took a deep breath and was about to continue saying something. However, Spiritual Master Yu Hang finally regained his consciousness and interrupted. Was the little girl tried to take his disciple away? Spiritual Master Yu Hang rubbed his forehead and said, Little girl, Nianmo's teachers are appointed by the Divine Lord. Hence, he can only recognize the 10 of us as his teachers. No one else can have this title. Was it true? If so, Gu Shijiu had lost the opportunity to recruit a disciple, which means she could not complete the mission as well. If she could not be his teacher, what other excuses could she use to stay by his side? Suddenly, an idea came up after she looked at Spiritual Master Yu Hang. Spiritual Master Yu Hang. What did you say earlier? Spiritual Master Yu Hang was stunned by her question. He repeated. I said Nianmo's teachers were all appointed by the Divine Lord. Not this, the last phrase. Spiritual Master Yu Hang was stunned. The last phrase? What was it? Spiritual Master Yu Hang had a good memory, so he finally recalled after a quick ponder. I said your kung fu is quite good, but it is not perfect, especially the spells. I think it is because you have no teacher to guide you. I am sure you will excel if you have a good teacher. Do you mean you want to recruit me as your disciple? Gu Shijiu asked. Spiritual Master Yu Hang was confused. Oh yeah. He was taken aback as it initially seemed that Gu Shijiu was trying to steal his disciple. Sure. Gu Shijiu agreed. Spiritual Master Yu Hang was confused. You. Gu Shijiu happily smiled and continued. I can be your disciple, but I have 3 conditions. Chongsheng can consider being your disciple if you can promise me the 3 conditions. It was usually the case that a student would be desperate to find a teacher who would take them under their wing, but that was the first time someone looked for a teacher with terms and conditions. Qing Luo was distraught. She felt it was very unfair. She remembered that she had put in a lot of effort and gone through many examinations when she tried to enter the clan. Hence, she began to blast Gu Shijiu verbally. Ren Chongsheng, who do you think you are? How can you talk to my master this way? Do you know how many people wish to be his disciple? How dare you propose terms and conditions for being my master's disciple? Master, this girl is too arrogant. Don't take her. Qing Luo, keep silent. Spiritual Master Yu Hang interrupted Qing Luo. He turned to Gu Shijiu and asked, What conditions do you have? Firstly, I can be your disciple, but I want the greeting ritual to be waived. Secondly, I want my freedom so that I can come and leave whenever I want. You should not interfere with this. Lastly, I want to be your most senior disciple, so that I can help you to guide your juniors. Gu Zijia's conditions were considered harsh. Even before Spiritual Master Yu Hang could say anything, Qing Luo already yelled at Gu Shijie. Who do you think you are? We will only recognize our eldest brother as our senior. No one else can replace him. Gu Shijie did not bother with her as she was a mighty immortal who was more than 200 years old. She would not take the words of a young girl too personally. She only looked at Spiritual Master Yu Hang and asked, "Deal?" Spiritual Master Yu Hang paused and said frankly, "I can promise you the first two conditions. However, the strongest is always the leader. You can be their leader and guide them on behalf of me without hurting them if you manage to defeat Nianma." It was entirely out of Qing Luo's expectation that her master agreed on such harsh terms. She even suspected that her master's brain had gone haywire. She shouted, "I'll never obey you." Gu Shijie was finally willing to look at her. "Don't worry, I'm not interested in guiding you." She was not a saint and not interested in teaching a stubborn person. In fact, she only wanted to be Shen Nianmo's guide, and the rest would just be favors. Qing Luo was speechless. However, she was not stupid. "Ren Chongsheng, you just want to control my eldest brother, don't you? Hehe. You are smart this time." Gu Shijie complimented her and looked at Spiritual Master Yu Hang. "So I assume you agree with all the terms?" Spiritual Master Yu Hang looked at Shen Nianma. He calmly said, "She can be the boss if she can defeat me 1 year later. Meanwhile, she does not need to address me as eldest senior, and I will not address her as my senior either. We will call each other by name." Spiritual Master Yu Hang immediately looked at Gu Shijie. "Sounds fair, what do you think?" In fact, Gu Shijie did not have a strong interest in the hierarchy. She was just trying to find an excuse to teach Shen Nianma. She was certain that Shen Nianma would try his best to practice because of this incident. That was her main objective. Therefore she happily agreed. "Sure, I'll call him Nianma from now onward." "Fui." Shen Nianma corrected her. "You must call me Fui." Otherwise, he felt that she was calling a little boy. "Fine, Fui." Gu Shijie felt the name was lovely, but it also made her feel a little depressed. Nianma, who is the person behind the plot? Spiritual Master Yu Hang Jinren did not see the young palace master, so he was curious. It is a woman who prefers to dress like a man. Her cultivation level should be at 1,000 years and above, comparable to the standard of a golden immortal. One of her strengths is alchemy. The half-orc men under her command are not real beasts. They have swallowed a kind of special pill, and have unfortunately turned into their beastly appearance. She took the children away to create a kind of pill that can increase one's power instantly by great folds. Shen Nianma shared his information. Yu Hang Jinren was puzzled. Where is the woman now? She has escaped through a secret tunnel. Qing Luo stamped her feet eagerly and said, "We cannot let this vicious woman run away. Why aren't we going after her? Let's go. Let's go." She took a leap and entered the secret tunnel. Gu Shijie was speechless. Shen Nianmo's expression changed abruptly. "Nonsense." Swift as lightning, he entered the tunnel. Ah! A loud scream could be heard coming from Qing Luo in the tunnel. Covered entirely in a vivid flash of purple ray, she could be seen being taken out of the tunnel. The impact was so strong that she almost bumped into Si Qing. Si Qing gave her a hand to help her stand properly. Qing Luo was still in a state of shock. She looked at Shen Nianma uneasily and said, "My eldest senior, you." She saw it clearly. It was Shen Nianmo's sleeves that took her out of the tunnel. Fool. Shen Nianma did not hold back his sarcasm. "What makes you think that you can enter this sort of place easily? When will you learn to be smarter?" Qing Luo was a little intimidated under his stern manner, but she remained unconvinced. "The woman has escaped from here, so we should go after her. Moreover, I do not see anything strange about the tunnel." Speaking of which, her tongue was suddenly a little numb. She could not help but try licking her lips. Oddly enough, her lips began to taste as sweet as honey, so she continued to lick more and more. She could not help it. It was like an addiction. Suddenly, she was driven by a strong desire to chew and swallow her lips. It was a strange desire, strong enough to disregard the consequences. She had lost all sense of thought. Immediately, she started biting her lips. "Stop biting." Gu Shijie, who had been standing aside, suddenly emerged. An intermittent seven-colored ray flashed by, and Qing Luo was then frozen. The crowd was shocked. They glanced to the direction where Gu Shijie was coming from. Instead of looking back, Gu Shijie only fixed her eyes on Qing Luo. "She is poisoned," she said coldly but firmly. Everyone then turned their eyes and focused on Qing Luo. Qing Luo stood frozen like a piece of wood that was unable to move. Only her eyes blinked in despair. Her complexion, however, was very attractive at the moment. Her cheeks flushed crimson, as pink as the cherry blossoms. Her lips were brightly colored, as charming as the blossoming peach trees in the rainy season of March. Qing Luo was a good-looking lady with silky smooth skin. The place was dim, so they did not realize her sudden change of complexion. Not until Gu Shijie pointed it out. What kind of poison had she got? Yu Hang Zhenren's power was exceptionally good, but he knew nothing about poisons at all. Hence, his disciples were no different. Shen Nianma knew very little about it too. He could cure normal poisons, but not the one that Qing Luo had. All of them looked at each other in dismay, then to Gu Shijie. Yu Hang Zhenren gazed at Gu Shijie with eyes full of hope and said, "Chongsheng, do you know about this type of poison? How should we cure it?" Gu Shijie remained silent. Instead, she circled Qing Luo to observe her. Then she took out a light blue needle. As seen from her eyes, panic started to fall upon Qing Luo. Swiftly, Gu Shijie placed several needles on her neck, her hands and her back. Qing Luo was suffering from a severe itching all over her body. She wanted to bite on anything just to feel better. Gu Zhijia's acupuncture treatment gave her an immediate sense of relief, at least for now. She gasped for air, hoping that Gu Shijie would place a few more needles to save her from the misery. The blue needles had visibly turned pink. Only the very end of the needle, the part where Gu Shijie was holding, was still in its original color. She flicked the needle away, and it disappeared instantly when it hit the wall. "The poison that she has got is the cherry blossom snake poison. The poison is contagious. It is best if you stay away from her to avoid any skin contact," Gu Shijie answered with great composure. All were panicked. Yu Hang Zhenren was astonished as well. "Is there any cure?" "There is. Please wait for a moment." Gu Shijie teleported to the side of Si Qing and demanded, "Give me your hand." Ah. Si Qing was obviously bewildered. "You are poisoned as well. If you want to live, give me your hand now." Then, Gu Shijie took out another blue needle. Si Qing trusted her, so he gave her both hands and looked at her fixedly, overwhelmed with a strong sense of admiration. His female idol was about to cure the poison for him. He was grateful for the poison, all of a sudden. Otherwise, she would not approach him as closely as she was now. Nonetheless, he was still a little nervous for what Gu Shijie was about to do. Shen Nianma suddenly offered, "Let me do it." He then took the needle away from Gu Shijie. "No way. You cannot possibly do it." "I can," Shen Nianma interrupted. Confidently, he knew the steps. He saw how Gu Shijie did it a few moments ago. There should be no difference regardless of who performed it. It could be him or Gu Shijie, as long as the result was the same. Gu Shijie tried to understand his purpose. He is infected through transmission, so the treatment will be different from the previous one. There is no way you can do it, even though you have memorized the steps. "Let me. I will do as you say." Shen Nianma did not keep himself back. Gu Shijie was at a loss for words. Gu Shijie could not quite understand his mood swings. However, it was not the proper time to argue. She told him immediately about the steps and observed carefully as he performed them. Shen Nianma was arguably one of the greatest talents that she had seen. He pointed the needles at the acupuncture points swiftly according to Gu Zhijia's instructions, no matter how complicated the steps were. He handled the treatment with great dexterity. A few moments later, Si Qing's poison was contained. Yu Hang Zhenren took a look at both of his beloved disciples and wondered, "Has the poison been cured already?" Gu Shijie shook her head to dismiss his hope. "I have not got rid of the poison entirely. I can only contain it. If we fail to find the cure within a day, they will both die when the poison takes effect." What is the cure? How can we find it? Gu Shijiu did not answer his questions. Instead, she took out 2 bags and placed Si Qing and Qing Luo in the bags respectively. She then responded to Yu Hangzhenren, who was seemingly confused. Please take both of them back and find the closest tavern. Place them in 2 different ice baths. I will meet you later when I find a cure. Before he answered, she took a swift leap and disappeared into the pitch-black tunnel. Aside from the cure, the poison itself was a very rare treasure, especially the snake. The crowd was shocked by Gu Zijia's sudden disappearance into the tunnel. Now that Gu Shijiu had entered the tunnel as well, would anything happen to her? Yu Hangzhenren gazed at the tunnel with a rather complicated look in his eyes. He was actually amazed by the lattice's extraordinary ability, though unsure of her origin. He was not worried that anything would go wrong. Gu Shijiu was very careful in her every move, unlike Qing Luo, who was completely reckless. She must have entered the tunnel to look for the cure. Yu Hangzhenren had many men with him. Almost all of the elites were present. Also, he had contacted many of his friends for their help. While he was there having a conversation with Gu Shijiu, the rest of the people were thoroughly inspecting the tree palace. The most powerful half-orc men were all summoned by the young palace master to guard the place. All of them were, unfortunately, killed by Gu Shijiu and Xin Yanma. There were many half-orc men in the tree palace, but most of them escaped when they realized their lives might be at risk. Those that were left behind were stranded in the palace. In the end, all of them were captured alive by the disciples of the different clans. There were many routes in the tree palace, like a massive labyrinth of intricate windings. It would take a long time to explore the place fully. Seeing both of his disciples being poisoned, Yu Hangzhenren was desperate to protect them, for fear that anything bad might happen to them. Nianma, take them and leave this place. Do according to what Chongsheng has said and place them in ice baths. I will stay and wait for her here. Yu Hangzhenren instructed Xin Yanma. Xin Yanma disagreed to his proposition. You should guide them and leave this place. I will check the tunnel with her. With a swift leap, he dived into the tunnel. Yu Hangzhenren was taken by utter surprise. He rushed forward in despair. Nianma. He called out his name desperately. The child must not be harmed at all. Otherwise, he would have to bear all the consequences. Master, I am fine. You can now leave with them. A directed audio came from the tunnel. Yu Hangzhenren was still very concerned. Chongsheng, are you all right? I am fine. We are now looking for the cure. Yu Hangzhenren was finally relieved. Without further ado, he guided his disciples and left the place together. Within the aisles of the tunnel, Gu Shijiu floated in an ethereal lightness. She stayed focused on every little detail. The tunnel felt as though it was endless and completely dark. Without her immense level of cultivation, she would not be able to see anything. Qing Luo got the poison from a snake, so only the gallbladder of that particular snake could cure the poison completely. Qing Luo was bitten within seconds in the tunnel, meaning that the snake must be hiding somewhere close to the entrance. The secret tunnel was the only way of escape for the young palace master, so there must be many traps to ensure that no one in pursuit was able to reach her. The traps were her guarantees of a successful escape, which explained why Xin Yanma was so eager in taking Qing Luo out of the tunnel to make sure she was unharmed. He was quick but not quick enough. Qing Luo was already bitten. The snake was very hard to come by. Gu Shijiu had never seen it before too. However, she had studied the book of poisons that Di Fui left behind, so she was aware of the symptoms and the cure. The young palace master must have been keeping the snake in one of the corners, and only released it when she was escaping. Being in such a dark tunnel, Gu Shijiu dared not act impetuously and had to be very careful. Right after she came in, she could feel some movements around her. Intuitively, she moved back a little in retreat, and was surprised to see Xin Yanma landing next to her. Gu Shijiu was concerned. This spot is dangerous. Let's get to a higher place. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference. as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.